It is Locked On Jazz for the Monday, December the 6th, still in Cleveland, but what a thrilling weekend of all sorts of NBA awesomeness. We'll be breaking it all down for you as the Jazz pull off two thrilling wins, one versus Cleveland, one versus Boston, showing why the offense is dominant, why they can survive some defensive weaknesses, and some things to learn from. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow! Where's my video?
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every single day, and thank you very much. It is free and available on all platforms. On YouTube, there's a little button right there. You can hit subscribe and hit the bell as well. Thanks so much for jumping aboard and joining us. Good morning to John and Derek and Emil and Bryce. There's all sorts of excitement. Rudy, both of them, right out of the chute. Dual Rudy problems for the rest of the league. The spacing when Gay was the 5 was tremendous. Were our eyes lying? It was a heck of a weekend. Friday and Sunday, great games within, 40 hours of each other. The Jazz go down to the wire, beat two good basketball teams, and play, I think, in a lot of ways, the way we've been hoping they're going to play most of the season and look that way. So let's get into it. I did feel like as I was prepping this show, there's absolutely no way to get everything done and have everything covered correctly. It certainly feels that way in a lot of different manners that I'm going to forget something before we're done today. So the big picture takeaway to me was what we talked about coming into this week, which was whether or not, this December schedule and the Jazz playing at the time when this month started, the Jazz were the number one offensive team in the league by a large margin, and they're beginning this stretch of playing top 10 defensive teams the whole time. And so here we were against the number 3 and the number 4 defensive teams in the league, two very, very different defensive teams. So Boston switches the most pick and rolls of anyone in the NBA, about 40% of all picks they switch. And then they accentuated even more when they pulled Robert Williams basically from that game. Al Horford played the center and then stretched us out on the other end of the ball. But let's stay on the offensive side. And what you see is the Jazz were able to attack switching. Frankly, the Jazz, if you go back and look at last season, they were the number 1 offense in the league against switching. When it became a problem was when suddenly everyone was 6'8" and 220 for the Clippers. But when you really look at for the season, there aren't a lot of teams that can switch 1 through 5 in the regular season and cause the Jazz a great deal of difficulties. And the Jazz exploited that in the game, and we'll look at all these numbers here in a second, against Boston. And then on Sunday, the Jazz played a Cleveland team that was vastly different. So they're 3 7-footers. They allow shots at the rim, but they defend them incredibly. They drop the big. They hug three-point shooters. They're the 7th best team in the league at denying the 3, 3rd best team in the league at defending the 3. And what's so interesting is here's the Jazz offense again, despite all those things, completely dictates the game they want to play. And that is, the Jazz got off 99 threes in the last 2 days. So both those defenses are set up in a manner that's supposed to be so you can't get your 3-point shots. Boston's going to be able to switch everything. They stay hugging your shooters. They don't get caught in rotations. And yet, the Jazz were actually good enough offensively, spaced well enough. Rudy's rolling in a manner so that the Jazz were able to still launch, I believe it was, Ron Boone said it last night, 51 threes, and then they dropped 48 last night against the team that allows the 7th fewest. So the biggest takeaway to me to both of these games, from just a big picture standpoint, is that the Utah Jazz offense is, as of this moment, still so dominant and so well-rounded and so versatile that no matter what's being thrown at them right now, they're still an elite level defensive offensive team. So let's walk through it like we always do and kind of look at our periods of how we played in the 8 periods we saw. And see what we can find. NBA stats just went wonky on me, so let me reset this for a second. And we'll see from an offensive standpoint, the Jazz completely dominant. So in the first quarter against Boston, the offense was a 146 and the defense was a 96. And as you know, we talk about this all the time. If we hold someone under 100 for a quarter, it's pretty hard to beat us when our offense is good. And if we ever do it for 2 quarters, we'll win every time. Sometimes we push that to the limit. But 146 to 96, I mean, that was a dominating offense efficiency. For those that are new to these numbers and just picking up because the Jazz have won, 8 of 10 now, and without 2 wacky replays, would have won 10 straight. That's tuning in, then the offensive efficiency number in the league, about a 111, is average. Anything over 120 is elite. So anything 10 below that, anything 100 is elite. That's kind of our benchmarks. Is if you're over 120 or below 100 defensively, you're through the roof. We then kind of fell apart in that second quarter against Boston. Our offense went to a 91.3. We didn't have the same offensive prowess. We got kind of caught up. They switched and kind of stymied us when we came back out in the third quarter. Boston, a very good middle of the quarter teams in the league, and then we got rolling. That third quarter was insane. One of the best quarters of basketball I've ever seen. If you did not watch it and you're looking for something for entertainment, go back if you have League Pass and go just watch it. There were 14 lead changes. There were 10 ties. The Jazz offensive rating in that third quarter was a 171. Yes, they averaged 1.7 points every time they crossed half court. They allowed 164. And this is when Boston basically abandoned Robert Williams as the center. They played Al Horford as their center for 9 minutes and 16 seconds. Actually, in the 2 minutes and 44 seconds that Williams was on the floor, we didn't defend it very well either, but that might have been, I'd have to look and see. They had a 200 offensive rating. When Hassan Whiteside was on the floor for 244, we had a defensive rating of 260. Hassan, who turned out to be injured with this glute butt issue, did not have a very good third quarter, and they scored every single time. And then in the fourth quarter, it was still an offensive juggernaut. We had a 142 offensive rating, and our defense wasn't great at a 127. And so here we were against the number 4 defense in the league, and we put up a 138 offensive rating. I mean, that is crazily unheard of. Now, you can worry about the defense in that, but I went back and rewatched the game, and what was so interesting to me is that we abused, tortured, victimized Al Horford on almost every possession. And so, on one sense, what happened in this game is that we were so good defensively with Rudy Gobert in a regular form that Boston had to switch out of their regular game, which is Robert Williams is an elite level defensive center. Marcus Smart and Robert Williams are the best defensive combination, the pick and roll in the NBA. And because of how good we are defensively, which is if Rudy's patrolling the middle, you're not going to score, that they felt their number one thing they had to do in their game plan was move Rudy on the outside, which they did. Al Horford went and sat in the far side corner, and Rudy's not at the rim, and we had a really hard time defending. This is still an issue for us. But simultaneously, what that did to the Celtics was it took away their primary best defensive players in Robert Williams and Marcus Smart as a defensive combination, and then we torched them. So while, yes, they exposed some of our defensive weaknesses, we actually tortured them offensively with our offensive prowess because of the fact that we have that ability to do that, and that's how we won the Celtic game. And then Donovan was amazing. Donovan's been amazing for a little while now and been certainly fun to watch. So that's the Boston game. So the big picture takeaway here is that the offense against 2 elite defensive teams that are very, very different has been able to be dominant in both games. The Boston one is specifically that what they did to try to exploit us defensively was what allowed us to dominate offensively, and you win the game. It's a give and take, and we had the answer on that one. We'll look at the Cleveland game more specifically here in a minute, and what it was like to have Rudy Gay at the 5 with Rudy Gobert. Someone I think just I don't know where that came from. Rudy Gobert off the floor as Hassan Whiteside did not play. So we have all that coming up for you. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Pick offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, offers all the superstar players as well as bench players. Prize Pick offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. All of our users that deposit and use the promo code NBA will receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. So you pick 2 to 5 players and over/under on the projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks also allows mixed sports entries. So if you want a little Monday Night Football and a little NBA, you can do it. Use the award-winning app on the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to the App Store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Today's show is also brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. Murdoch Chevy is here for you. The great lineup of Murdoch trucks. This is often the time of year for various tax purposes and other things that people want to buy big vehicles, work vehicles, trucks. Well, it's the $500 red tag bonus cash deal is going on right now on popular 2021 and 2022 Chevy vehicles. Well-qualified buyers are also getting 0% for 72 months. It is the season pass season. With the purchase of any new 2020 through 2022 Chevrolet, you get a season pass to Solitude, assuming it snows at some point in time. And the Murdoch Chevy is there for you. The lineup, obviously, there's the Suburban and the Tahoe, well. The Trailblazer and the Traverse and the Equinox and the Trax, vastly underrated SUVs. Then there's the electric car, the Bolt, and then the Spark, Malibu, Camaro, and Corvette, all available for you as well. It's all at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. Check in on some questions. Last year, you talked a lot about the importance of 10-0 runs. What is the situation with that this year with the Jazz? Matthew, it feels as though they've been less frequent until just recently. That spurt, that offensive spurt of 2 or 3 threes in a row plus some defensive stops, does not feel like it's been happening quite as often as it did prior. So I would agree with you. I actually thought about that. I'll look it up. I can do that pretty quickly on the plane and see what happens there. Dual problems with the rest of the league. Rudy dual problems. The spacing when Gay was at the 5 was tremendous, and were our eyes lying. All right, well, let's look into it. Let's do our regular numbers breakdown. I always think it tells us a little bit of the story. So here's the first part of this game that jumps out to me. They're a mammoth team. So Cleveland's very different. They play 3 7-footers because none of them are stiffs. Allen, Mobley, and Markkanen can really move. Darius Garland is flat out good. They're on the way. That's a good basketball team. Markkanen is the weak link of the group, but that's fine. And Mobley's going to be better every single day. So that's a very impressive group. And their last 5 losses are Brooklyn, Golden State, Phoenix, Brooklyn, Utah. And Boston's their 6th. So they're losing to teams they should lose to. They're not losing to anyone else. JB's running good stuff. They look good. The first thing that jumps out to me in this game is what we did offensive rebounding. The effort level by the Jazz on the offensive glass last night. The Jazz got 37% of all of their misses in last night's game. Now, Cleveland got 36.5, but if you were going to choose one side, the fact that we matched them, Rudy Gobert had 13% of all misses he got as offensive rebounds. That is a insane number. And Rudy Gay got 19% of all of our misses when he was on the floor as offensive rebounds. That's actually higher than anybody on Cleveland. Cleveland was led by Mobley and Allen, who each were at 11%. They obviously played a lot more. But what the Jazz were able to do by pounding on the offensive glass, that's just a commitment. Defensive rating last night when Rudy was on the floor, Gobert was a 112, so not incredibly brilliant. The offensive rating was a 116, which then means you run down and would think that the offensive rating when Rudy Gay was on the floor was through the roof, but it was not. So that's a little strange on how that played out. because it did feel as though the Jazz offense had the great spacing that was talked about. So let's see if we can dig in by quarter and learn a little bit, and then we'll probably have to go look at popcorn to look at it. So game opened really good first quarter. We had a 133 offensive rating and a 126 defensive rating. And Rudy Gay played about 5 minutes, and the offensive rating was 100. With Gobert on the floor, the offensive rating was a 135. And then off the floor, it must have been about the same. Again, Gay's playing some minutes with Gobert, so it's a little tricky. I'll try to figure out. We'll try to see if we can find it. But so here's the Jazz offense of prowess against the third best defensive team is at a 133 again. Totally different team, completely playing it in a different manner than Boston, and yet we had an answer. And a lot of it was open side pick and roll, keeping their bigs to one side of the floor, playing on a shortened floor. Conley and Donovan were great. Second quarter, same story. We're at a 122 offensively. Defensive rating was a 113. Rudy Gobert now is digging into this game. He was just absolutely incredible with amazing effort without touching the ball. Just incredible effort. And he had a 95 defensive rating. Third quarter, the Jazz have a 124 offensive rating, a 108 defensive rating, and Rudy Gay and Rudy Gobert do not share any time on the floor. The Jazz changed their rotation at this point. In the second quarter, I didn't update you on that. In the second quarter, they share a bunch of time. It's hard to tell, but Gobert's offensive rating is a 130, and Rudy Gay's is a 100. So in the first half, at least it feels like that spread offense didn't actually lead to anything. In the third quarter, they split time, and the offensive rating with Rudy Gobert on the floor is a 125, and the offensive rating with Rudy Gay on the floor is a 110. So again, even though it felt like spread and wide open, that doesn't necessarily yield anything, but it was positive. The defense was surprisingly good in that setup. And then here is the fourth quarter, where honestly, I think we got tired. What took place to me was that we were playing another emotional, physical game. We were charting possessions in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. We ended up with 6 in the first quarter, 5 in the second quarter, 6 in the third quarter, and 1 in the fourth quarter. So we really stopped running, stopped moving the ball, or stopped getting out open. Cleveland was able to set their defense, and our offense completely fell apart. And we had an 82 offensive rating in that fourth quarter. Rudy Gobert played the entire quarter. They had a 118. And we fell apart and held on to win barely. But I think it was a fatigue issue. We're trying to play fast. We're trying to run. Makes it very difficult. From a numbers geek standpoint, here's an interesting note. Our offensive rating actually was lower than Cleveland's in a game we won. Do not see that very often. At the same time, our offensive rating was a 116. And to the point of what we're talking about here, which is, so Cleveland comes in with the fourth best defense. They allow a 104.7. And we had a 116. So we were 11.3 points better than what Cleveland regularly allows. We're on average about 9 points better than league average right now, which is one of the largest rates above league average in the history of the NBA. It's actually super hard to find a team since it's been charted, and you actually can't. We're historically great right now. Boston, I mean, it's even more severe. Boston went and scored 145 points the next night against a Portland Trailblazer team that is definitely in massive flux of where they are. So against Boston, our offensive rating finished at a 138, and Boston was the fourth best defense in the NBA. They allow 106.5. So right now we have a 116. If you use NBA, I like cleaning the glass better. But if you use the NBA, we have a 116.2 offensive rating. The next closest is a 112.7 in Atlanta, and the league average is Sacramento at a 108.5. So we're nearly 8 points above average, and that includes blowout time. The reason I like cleaning the glass is you eliminate the blowout time, and it becomes even more extreme of how incredible we are right now. According to Clean the Glass, our offensive rating is a little higher. It's a 118.2. Atlanta is second at 113.6. And the 15th is Boston at 109.8. The league average is a 109. We're 9 points better than league average offensively. And in both of our first two games against the third and fourth best defenses in the NBA, we've been well more than that, 9 points above what they allow. So in 2 nights of this stretch of December, we've actually broken 2 elite defenses. Pretty interesting. Now, Minnesota's obviously a bugaboo for us. All right, bunch of other things to talk about, and a lot of your questions, a lot of involvement, a good audience today on the live show as well as on all of our podcasts. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen to the day. Thanks to all the people who sent me the raps as well from Spotify. Those are much appreciated. And by the way, I just got to give a tip of the hat. There are just Jazz Twitter is super smart. There's a lot of people out there. Some people are bombastic, and I torched 2 of them last night at the end of the live show. But and I don't want to Dan Clayton and Ben Dowsett, those are kind of almost media members more than just Jazz Twitter. But Jack Bushman, I think is a guy's name who's doing stuff. The guy who put up the Rudy video last night and had the recognition of that with that insane play. If you saw it, Rudy stops 6 different actions on one play. Hey, there are some blowhards out there that are making stuff up and they just have to be negative, and that's their existence in life. And that's too bad for them, because this was an incredible weekend. This was the ultimate weekend to me of championship or nothing. Shut up. What a great, entertaining weekend of sports. And congratulations to Utah and Utah State and to BYU women's soccer. It's all awesome. But we're here to be entertained, and we are certainly entertained. But I just want to tip my hat, because there's a bunch of people out there that are, don't get paid for it, and they do a bunch of stuff. And I'm amazed how often my Twitter feed actually has something that's really, really good from somebody out there. It's a funky world, because I'd like to retweet all of them all the time. But frankly, in this day and age, Holly and I were talking about this the other day. If I retweet you, I actually have to go back through everything you've ever done in your entire life now and check all of your tweets and all of your Instagram and make sure you haven't done something else that's horrific. That then I suddenly have endorsed you. And so it's, if I don't retweet you, it's not a statement. I don't think you're a value. It's that I'm just very cautious right now of who I'm supporting, because I don't want to support somebody who's done something horrific in the last 3 years. And I don't really want to take the time to look it up all the time. But that's where we are. So, it's too bad, but that's the reality. And I don't actually have a problem with not endorsing people that are not worthy of it. So blind endorsements are not great. Anyway, wild tangent that was not anticipated on the show. But what was anticipated on the show was to tell you about Built and what's going on with our friends at Built Bar. Caramel macchiato. Wow. They just kind of keep going and have these amazing flavors. 100% real chocolate, 100% delicious. Caramel macchiato, caramel almond delight, coconut brownie chunk, the best. I didn't bring enough on the road. Blueberry muffin, paranormal pumpkin, white chocolate cheesecake, all specials. Plus, coconut marshmallow puff, and then the regulars. Peanut butter brownie, coconut, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, cookies and cream, double chocolate, raspberry, cherry barcia. Caramel macchiato? Wow. Caramel almond delight might be great too. I have not tried that because I'm allergic to nuts, despite the fact that every restaurant I go to these days seems to want to feed them to me. Side note, 3rd time in 4 months last night. Really? Anyway, Built.com, promo code LOCKED15 gets you 15% off. If you have not jumped the Built Bar train, please do so. Mix and match and enjoy all of it. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at betonline.ag. Where are the Jazz? What is the line now? Have we moved up? The Lakers keep moving down. What do we have? NBA futures. Let's check it out. Championship Brooklyn sits at plus 275. Golden State at plus 425. Milwaukee at plus 725. Phoenix still at plus 900, and we're at plus 950. So they have us as the 5th most likely, with the Lakers at plus 1,200, Miami at plus 1,400. It does feel like we've gotten down to 5 teams from kind of a group of 11 or 12, though Chicago might argue about that. And if the Clippers get healthy and if Embiid in Philadelphia ever gets right, so maybe there'll be more teams that percolate into the mix before we're done. But it does kind of feel that way right now. Conference futures, the Nets and Bucks, obviously, there on our end, 175 for the Warriors, 425 for the Suns, and 450 for the Jazz, plus 600 for the Lakers. That's all at betonline.ag. Promo code LOCKEDON gets you a 50% welcome bonus. I do really want to take your questions. We usually trend Monday, but there's too much stuff to watch. Taylor Gamble points out Donovan kills people on switches. It's so fun to watch. The fact is, this is why we actually kill most 1 through 5 switches, because Donovan or Mike Conley can beat almost anyone off the dribble. It's not until Nicholas Batum, Paul George, Marcus Morris, and some other 6'8", 250 freak, not a freak, just mad at him, is able to switch on us that it causes problems. You have to be so special to do that. If Garland's shot goes in at the buzzer, that possession was well defended, or are we panicking? It's interesting. It's a great question, JC. I love this. I mean, it's such a recency bias, right? We freaked out after New Orleans and Memphis, and the storyline would be the exact same here, because we totally let go of the rope late in the third quarter. And then I thought we're just wildly fatigued in the fourth quarter. And if you listen to my radio call, which you can get at Utah Jazz Radio if you ever want to listen to a recap of it, or Jazz Game Rewind, I talk about it a lot, that everyone's exhausted. And so to me, watching that, I thought our guys were really, really tired. And so, are we freaking out afterwards? Maybe not as much, because I thought Cleveland was really good and pushed us, and Garland was a problem. But, Garland was a real problem. Like, we couldn't have Rudy leave the lane and come up and defend him, because otherwise it's a lob over the top to Allen or an offensive rebound. And so Mike had to really, really defend those guys at a difficult rate, and Garland was having a day. And so then Mike defended beautifully on that last possession. So interesting how you can tax defenses, right? Rudy rolling keeps the big back to open up Mike, who's leading the league in that floater zone right now, and Donovan for those shots. And then Rudy rolling brings the third guy over, and we kick it around for threes. They actually did it same way by having Allen in the dunker spot or come off the pick that Rudy had to stay back. But they also, the threat of Markkanen or Mobley for offensive rebounding is so significant that you don't want your big to leave the basket. This is a great game. Like, it's just incredible. And if you're listening to this show, you're a junkie, you're into it. Like, the level of difference between Boston and Cleveland on 2 nights was just outstanding to watch. People who don't know the value of Rudy will say, Awoken got the better of him. Those of us who watch know Rudy flat out dominant. Rudy was dominant last night. Jared Allen's really good. Ironically enough, Jared Allen is the missing piece for the Brooklyn Nets. Jared Allen is really, really, really good. And Evan Mobley's going to be terrific. Cleveland's got a nice little thing going. Isaac Okoro, I'm not a fan of. I wasn't out of college. I mean, he's a beautiful body, and he's incredible defensively, and he's physical. It reminds me a little bit of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. At some point, you just have to shoot in this league. We left him open on the corner, wide open on purpose, 2 of 7 for 3, basically won us the game. Right? Like, that strategy of leaving Isaac Okoro wide open in the corner, which is the same one we did against Terrence Mann that eventually bit us on the 6th game, and we do against Jayshawn Tate in Houston, and we do against Josh Okogie in Minnesota, has actually worked almost all the time. It worked last night and arguably won the Jazz the game. So both games shouldn't be that close if turnovers were controlled. The turnovers are only a problem defensively to me. I'm just not willing to play this game that you can have everything offensively. We have the greatest offense right now, arguably ever in the game. Like, I'm not sure there's ever been an offense farther above average than what the Jazz are doing right now. I'm not sure there's ever been an offense that's farther ahead of the number 2 team than what the Jazz are doing right now. So we turn the ball over a lot. But we also push ahead. We pass. We take risky plays. Like, we turn it over. The fast breaks going the other way and the fact that we're 29th in the league defensively off a turnover is the problem. It's not an offensive problem. It's a defense problem. I'm not saying you were saying that it wasn't. But I just want to make sure we're really clear on how we talk about it. It is a defensive problem, not an offensive problem. So if we can get the Euro foul and get it back into a half-court set, that would help. But right now, if you look at us defensively, Our problem is after live ball turnovers. So we currently rank 9th defensively. We're the 4th best defense in the league at 0.99 after a made shot. We're the 10th best league after a defensive rebound, which is not great, which is 1.08. We need to get better. That's a little bit transition defense. It's not super. And then after a live ball turnover, we're 28th in the league at 1.36. Okay, that's not great. The league average, by the way, the 15th team in the league on that is 1.21. So we're 1.36. So we're 1.15 worse every time we allow someone to get out and run. So yeah, I mean, that's where the turnovers are a problem, but I cannot handle this discussion that turnovers are a problem for us offensively. Donovan unclutch versus Cleveland, back-to-back turnovers. Just watch the last 3 minutes. This is our negative guy who wants to come in. So clutch play is hard. Offensive rating in the final 5 minutes in the NBA is way down. Half-court defenses are set. If we just go to kind of what we were talking about there, it's basically all against made shots. So, the league average is about 1 point of possession now. It's down a good deal. And so scoring in the final minutes of games for players in the clutch is not easy, and you probably shoot 35%. Like if I were to pull up the league average of clutch scoring in the NBA in the last minutes of games, the best, there's like probably 3 guys that are over 45%. Like let's take the guys who are taking the most shots in the league and understand what you're asking out of people before we criticize them. So Bradley Beal is the best in the league right now at 48%, most shots in the league. And then Russell Westbrook's actually pretty good in the clutch at 49%. And Jokic is at 49%. And DeRozan in his mid-range game is at 45. And Dame is at 50. Those are the 5 best. Now, that's the final 5 minutes. If we take this down to, a 4-point game ahead or behind, and we take it down to the final, 2 minutes of the game, the numbers start to plummet. DeMar DeRozan's the best on his mid-range jumper at 46. Then Levine's at 41. Beal's having a great clutch year at 50. So is Dame at 58. Devin Booker's at 30%. Westbrook, we talked about transition, is going to be at 48. He's 3 of 10 from 3. Chris Paul's shooting 29%. Julius Randle's shooting 29%. So, yeah, Donovan turned it over and missed a shot, but that's not being unclutch. That's actually the game. Donovan is shooting 40% in the final 2 minutes of close games this year. It's kind of right on league average. And at 6'1", it's hard. So I think that's it. Derek, so many good plays in the last 2 games. 1, reduce turnovers. 2, keep your foot on the gas once we got the lead. I'm feeling like that second one, I think there's something to it. We need a little bit more mental resiliency in getting not allowing that 15-0 run in that period of time. That seems as though that seems to me to be kind of the one area thing that I would say this team needs. And it's probably the same thing that caused you to lose to the Clippers up 2-0 and the Nuggets up 3-1. Like that's a good practice moment. Matthew, I've been listening to the radio broadcast more often through Google Podcasts. I'm from the EU. It's very engaging. Well done. Thank you. It's actually why we have a Utah Jazz radio podcast and put the full broadcast up, is actually for all the people in Europe. That is exactly why we do it. So I'm glad that you get it. Final thing coming in here from Riker. Gobert getting 20 rebounds against a team with 3 7-footers on the floor is crazy. Not to mention every time he comes on the floor, he changed the flow of the game. Rudy was in his effort level yesterday was so incredible. Absolutely beyond anything I could imagine. Absolutely incredible. Great 2 games. All right, we'll talk about it more. We've got 2 days till we play. We fly from Cleveland to Minnesota today. So have a great one. Thanks very much for tuning in. It is